Okay, welcome back to How to Play Dominion 6. Probably the final video in this short series. Last time we actually started the game and got through a couple turns, went over the UI and how to recruit units, how to move armies around, and actually going into a couple battles. This time the goal is mainly just to discuss the magic system in a bit more detail, how to find magic sites and obtain magic gems, and then using those gems perhaps to cast ritual spells or forge magic items. I'd also like to establish a second fort to show you how that's done, and maybe build a temple or two as well. So, last time we finished a turn where we ended up in Newland after claiming it from the independent forces. And we generally want to continue to clear out the rest of our cap circle, all the provinces that are directly connected to our capital, in order to keep supplying it with more and more resources so we can make more units out of our capital. We have this issue with a river that's kind of dividing us from Newland and our capital, as well as dividing us from Faircliff here. And so in order to kind of continue clearing out the circle, we have to actually make our way back home, and that will take a couple turns because we're not especially fast moving. Now, I believe Raderick, yeah, he has enough movement speed on his own, 24, because he's on a horse, where he could actually move directly back to Ulm. Now, it makes it look like he's traveling across the river, but he's not. He just has enough movement speed to go 2 moves at once. But Ericborn, with the army and everything being very slow and heavily armored, they will not be able to do it. So if I have them both selected and click on Ulm, you'll see that Ericborn is going to go first to Pavonia, and then there across 2 turns, whereas Raderick will make the whole journey in 1 turn. In order to have them travel together, if that's something we wanted to do, we'd have to first click on Pavonia, and then you can actually manually queue up a second move for the following turn, so you don't have to remember to do that by holding Alt and clicking on another destination. But in our capital, we are making currently infantry of Ulm, but we may want to grab just 1 or 2 extra Black Knights to help out Raderick in the rear when he's clearing out some commanders. So if we do this, we can clear out and make room for some resources in order to grab just a couple Black Knights, and queue up maybe an extra infantry of Ulm in there. And then by the time we actually arrive back at the capital, we should have 4 Black Knights for us. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is actually I'm going to take one of the mages. They're all queued up for research because we have that set to be the automatic job that they do when they're created. But we want to do magic site searching. This is something that only mages can do. You have to have at least 1 level in 1 magic path in order to do it. Priests can technically also magic search, but normal commanders cannot. Normal military commanders. You have to have at least 1 level in one of the main magic paths, or be a priest of some level. There are ways to do magic site searching remotely, such as just sitting in a capital where you have a laboratory. You can cast certain ritual spells to find magic sites in different provinces without actually physically going there. But we'd have to research those. And so instead, we're going to just physically move Balthazar here over to Pavonia as well, so that he can then, on his following turn, search for magic sites. The other 2 will continue researching for now. We also can continue to move Sigbert, and I'm going to take this opportunity to actually go into the underground. So this little symbol here, this kind of cave symbol, means that there's an underground passage here. And if we right-click on that, we can see the underground. We see it leads to the Mudwater Caves. And it looks like there's going to be more caves connected to this one. Not necessarily, but it looks like it. So we're going to have him left-click on that to go down into the underground, just to scope that out for a little bit. Okay. That's going to be everything. We still have all our research queued up. We have recruitment queued up. No commanders are just idle, so we will end another turn. Okay, so we can see that we have completed research in construction. And we'll also witness a battle. Now, this is grayed out, and that's because we were not directly involved in this. This is a battle that occurred in Mudwater Caves, where we just sent our spy. And we get to see that because our spy is there. And this is a battle between the nation of Zabalba and the Independents. So because we're there, we get to witness it just kind of from a distance. And so we can look at Zabalba's forces, and we can look at what he defeated, and he did win a battle. So now we know that Zabalba is right down there. If we go down there again, we can see that there is much more to this cave system, and Zabalba is now right underneath this, and on the next turn, he could send this army upwards, and then he's on the surface, pretty nearby us. Now, we set them to defensive, so it's very unlikely that he'll ever go to war with us, but different circumstances could mean that this might be a danger zone that we need to keep an eye on. So that is the threat of an underground nation, is that they could pop up from, any one of these spots if they can travel through the underground and go upwards. So that's something to keep in mind. We're going to have him go back up for now. And if we want... okay, so we don't have an option, but oftentimes you'll find provinces you've claimed, you're able to make certain unique commanders, including a scout. So you could make additional scouts from some of these random provinces. And that often is not a bad idea, to have extra scouts, because you can witness certain battles, you can explore certain parts of the map, keep tabs on things, and scouts are generally pretty cheap, even if you hire the independent ones. So that's something to keep an eye out for, just to have a few extra scouts on hand. But keep in mind that they are not going to be spies. The Alms scouts are a special, spy trait. Gives them a lot more information than just the average independent scout. Okay, so we're continuing our journey back to the capital. And we have now Balthazar in Pavonia. And so if we click on his options, you'll see a couple more things. And this is a good opportunity for me to talk about preaching, too, because I didn't get to that last time. So any priest can theoretically preach in the province that they're in. And preaching is a way for priests to increase the dominion strength of the province they're in, much like a temple can increase the dominion strength, but preaching is specifically only for that province. Preaching will never cause it to spread in any way. It only increases the strength there. But due to the way that the temple checks work for sending out more dominion, it does help a lot to have high dominion strength in all your provinces. And it actually helps defending against the enemy dominion that's going to try to take you over. So having high dominion strength is good. And the interesting thing about preaching is that it can actually increase your dominion strength above your normal nation dominion strength. So by preaching, you could actually get dominion strength up to like 7, maybe, where your national dominion strength is only 4. But again, it's only for that specific province, and there are some caveats to that. So by doing the preaching action, the priest has a % chance to increase the dominion strength of that province at the end of the turn by a percentage of 30% times their priest level. So our priest here, Balthazar, he's only a level 1 priest. So he has a 30% chance to do so. And that also affects how high that he can preach the dominion strength in any given province. So I'm just double checking the math here because I don't want to misspeak a number. So it's 30% times their priest level. If you have a temple in the province, it will add a half of a level to their level just for the purpose of preaching. So if we had a temple in Pavonia and Balthazar preached, he would technically count as a 1.5 level priest, and thus he would have a 45% chance to increase the dominion strength here. You can also preach in a province that you control that has enemy dominion, and you don't have dominion. But any point of Dominion strength that the enemy has there decreases your chances by 5%. So it's really hard for the average priest to go into a territory that has, very high enemy Dominion strength and to preach that all the way and to restore faith to your god instead. That's pretty tricky. The other thing is that you cannot preach to a Dominion strength that is above double the priest's holy level, including the temple bonus. So if Pavonia was at Dominion strength of 2, he could no longer preach there because he's only level 1. If we had a temple, he could no longer preach if it was at Dominion strength of 3. So there are limits to how much priests can do, and this is why high-level priests, including our prophet, Urkborn with a temple can preach to a very high Dominion strength and has a very good chance of increasing the Dominion strength every time he preaches. But his time is pretty valuable, usually, as he is a prophet. But sometimes, if you really need Dominion strength in a specific spot, having your prophet there can help a lot. So that's preaching. It's not something you're probably going to do excessively, especially in the early game when your priests might be a bit more limited and you don't have a lot of temples yet. But later on, in the mid to late game, it can help very much so to have just very strong Dominion across your entire empire and have temples everywhere. So the temples, instead of bolstering your own provinces, they are instead sending out Dominion to spread further and go up against your enemies. Okay, so we could have him preach, but we're here to search for magic sites, and this is another option available to you here. And so if you click on this, he will spend this turn searching for any magic sites that are in the province. When a game is created, magic sites are distributed randomly across the entire map, including land, underground, and underwater provinces. And they must be found by players in order to be activated. Every magic site corresponds to a certain magic path, such as fire or air or water or astral, and that also corresponds to a certain level of that path. So there might be a level 2 fire site. There might be a level 1 air site. There might be a level 4 astral site, for example. In order to find it, you have to have a mage searching there that at least has those levels or above of those paths. So Balthazar searching here. If there are any level 1 fire sites, level 1 or 2 earth sites, or level 1 holy sites, he will find them. It's not a chance, there's not a roll involved here or anything like that. If the mage has those levels, has those paths, he will find it in one turn. We will not be informed, however, if he doesn't find anything, if there are other magic sites there. We won't be informed if there are other fire sites there that he just needs a higher level for, or if there are astral sites there that he just doesn't have paths for. All we're told is if he finds something or if he doesn't find something. That's it. So I will tell you that having level 1 in a path is not that bad. Most magic sites, I believe the number is like 80% or something like that, are going to be level 1 or 2. And I think 50 or 60% are just level 1. So do not fret about searching with the level 1 mage in a path, because you will still find some. But certainly the most impactful magic sites are going to be 3s and 4s, albeit pretty rare ones. So we're going to have him search that one. We are continuing back to Ulm. We are still recruiting, and we're a little bit iffy on resources here, because we still need to clear more spots. But we're trying to get just a handful of Black Knights. And we're continuing to make mages because we want to continue to do research. We're up to 33 research points per month now, so it's going at a fairly slow pace, but it'll ramp up. It'll ramp up. Okay, with that, we're going to end another turn as we pass through late summer now. Okay, so this is the message that we're given if we didn't find any magic sites at all. So either there are no more magic sites here, or a more skilled mage is required to reveal them. It's very, very unlikely that there are no magic sites at all there, but there's a lot of different levels and a lot of different paths, so odds are, in any given province, you're probably not going to find any. And again, there are the most magic sites in early age, there are less in middle age, and then the least in late age. We're also given a message that one of Urkborn's crippled units died during the march from Pavonia to Ulm. So as your units do battle, they will take injuries. And if we go into the army setup screen here, and we hold down tab, it'll bring up a little overlay here of any units that have suffered some sort of affliction. And so we see that these two guys both have an affliction. If we click on them, we can see that one of them has a limp, meaning that his combat speed has been reduced to half. His attack skill is -1, his defense is -1, and he has -4 map move. And that's not great. That's not great. This one has a chest wound, +5 encumbrance, so he generates a 5 extra fatigue with every attack, and -1 strength. These sort of things are going to happen to your units. Afflictions are relatively common, even for well-protected units. A lot of heavy hits that go through will likely cause an affliction. There are various ways to prevent afflictions, certain nations, certain blesses, things like that. There are certain mages or priests that can heal afflictions every round if they're in the same army, things like that. But oftentimes you're just going to have to accept that some of your units are just going to get injured, get wounded, and eventually kind of succumb to the number of injuries. It's usually not worth like pulling them out. They will never heal on their own. It requires a special effect of some kind to do that. So it just is what it is usually. I didn't want to misspeak there. That wasn't to say that this guy with a chest wound will eventually die because of his chest wound. Nothing else will become of this. He just has this as an effect, which affects him in battle. There is another affliction called Diseased, and that will slowly drain a character's max HP every turn outside of combat, every month, until he does die from it, unless he's healed through a different effect. So Diseased will kill your units. These other ones just weaken them in different ways. Okay, so we have a handful more of our Infantry of Ulm, so we can add all those into this squad, and now we've got a much more solid line here. And we also have these 4 Black Knights, so we're going to take those, and we're going to give them to Rhetoric, which does lower his map move, but he's traveling with our army now, so it's not that big of a deal. They're not quite as quick as he is. And we're going to set them on Guard Commander. Because they normally, if they were just a normal squad, they could only hold for 2 rounds before moving forward and attacking. Whereas Rhetoric as a commander can actually hold for 3, 4, or 5 rounds if he wants. And we're having him hold a little bit longer because we're all the way on the back of the battlefield, and we don't want him to rush in and die too quickly. So by having them on Guard Commander, they will move when he moves and not on their own terms. And once they get into a fight, they will fight as normal. But they won't ditch him in any way unless they break morale. Okay, so now we have a decent force here. We have 53 normal infantry units and our 4 cavalry alongside Rhetoric. And so this is a much more capable force that we can use. We can also see that we've hit autumn. And it seems I took cold scale instead of heat scale, I think. Starting to not remember. And so we can see now that both sides of this river have cold scale 1. And that means that the river is frozen and we can actually cross over this, which is handy. You'll notice that a lot of these other provinces don't have cold scale yet, even though it is autumn. It hasn't kicked in yet to be that cold. And this one does have cold scale. This one doesn't yet. This one just got added into our dominion. So next turn, this will be frozen over as well. And the snow does affect your map movement speed unless you have snow moving. And depending on your nation's comfort level, this will reduce the amount of income coming from different provinces you control, as well as supplies available there. And so, Ulm, as we know, doesn't have any preference for hot or cold. And so we went cold to give us some extra design points, but now that means that from Newland and Pavonia, we are drawing in a bit less income, about 5% less. You get 5% less income for every step of a temperature you're away from your nation's preferred temperature. And so that means, for a lot of nations, even if you don't take cold scales, you will make a bit less money and have a bit less supplies there during the winter months and during the summer months. But it's fairly negligible for the most part. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go after Faircliff here. There are 50-ish, give or take, Bear Tribe warriors, so we're going to move into there. We can also, if we wanted to, we could send in a mage into combat, but they still don't have many spells available to them, because we're only at construction level 1. This is the only thing available to us, and that allows us to make magic trinkets, but that doesn't help us in battle really at all. They do know some spells, and if you go in to the army setup and you click on a mage's battle orders, you can cast a specific spell and take a look at what they can cast. Because they're priests, they can cast Blessing and Stellar Decree, which is a banishment spell specifically against undead creatures. So every priest has available to them a banishment spell, regardless of level. And they also have a couple basic evocation spells. So one fire one and one earth one. These are not terrible spells. So Flying Shards, we can see that it has a range of 30 plus squares. And this range has a plus, so it's increased by 5 for every extra earth level the caster has. So if he was 2 earth, which he is, it would be 35 range. If he got up to 3 earth, by using summon earth power, for example, it would be 40 squares. The casting time is 75%. So this is the percentage of a normal round. So 100% casting time means it takes 1 full round to cast, and then it's modified different ways from there. So there are some that take 75%, there are some that take 200%, there are some that even take 300%, like really big spells. And so this helps determine how quickly you can sort of put out these spells across multiple rounds. If it has an area of effect, this will be designated here. So oftentimes it'll just be 1 person. It might be an area effect 1, meaning 1 square. It could be 3 squares. It could be 7 plus squares, where it might be 7 squares, but if you have extra levels in the path, it'll be even more squares. This is 1 person, but this also has a number of effects line. So this is going to shoot out 4 plus effects, or in this case, 4 plus shards, with 2 extra for every extra level the caster is. The 1 person means that it's going to hit 1 person only, but it's going to shoot 4 effects, 4 shards that can each hit 1 person. The precision, this is a modifier to your caster's precision score. So sometimes it'll be positive, and it'll be more accurate of a spell based on your caster's precision score, and sometimes it'll be much less accurate, and it might even have the inaccurate tag underneath this, where it just says inaccurate, which means that it'll almost never land exactly where you want it to. Like if you're calling down a meteor or something like that. Then there's the fatigue cost. So this one is 30 fatigue. That's also in addition to your spellcasting encumbrance, if you're wearing armor or something like that. A lot of mages will have a little bit of spellcasting encumbrance. So that's in addition to that. So this one is a 30 baseline fatigue, but also has a minus next to it. Meaning that for every, extra levels in the path will reduce the fatigue cost. I believe I talked about this last time. So if you have 2 earth, this will instead cost 15 fatigue. And if you have 3 earth, I believe it costs 10. I don't know the numbers past that, but needless to say, it gets pretty low on fatigue cost if you have higher level. And so that's why it can often be worth it to increase your spell level for multiple reasons, such as through summon earth power, in order to make even lower level spells you could cast otherwise, just make them better, to make them longer range and fire more effects or have a larger area of effect, less fatigue, maybe more damage. And if we look at the damage of these shards, it does slashing and blunt damage, or slashing or blunt damage, and it will do 7+, so an extra level for every level that the caster has. So with level 3 Earth, this will do 9 damage, slashing or blunt damage. It'll throw out 6 effects. No, I'm sorry. It'll throw out 8 effects. It'll cost 10 fatigue, and it'll have a range of 40. So if we had summon Earth Power, Flying Shards could be decently viable. Now, granted, it'll tell you if it's armor piercing or armor negating, or if anything else is special with this. This is just going to be straight up as if we swung a weapon at them for, 7+ damage. So it's not super good against well-protected targets, because that's, it's like a weak weapon attack against high protection targets. Probably not going to work. But against unarmored targets, if they have only, say, 3 protection or something, this is a nice little extra effect that you can have multiple mages just throwing this out over and over. I'm not saying Flying Shards is like an amazing spell you're going to use all the time or anything, but it's not insignificant, even at this point in the game. We can also look at Fireflies. It's going to be pretty similar. It's going to have similar range, casting time, area effect, 1 person, but this one gets 6 effects with no plus, so it's always going to be 6, no matter what your fire level is. This one has a -1 precision, so it's slightly less accurate, but a lower fatigue cost at 20, which could drop down to 10 with 2 fire, or 7 or so with 3 fire. And this one actually does 8 magic fire damage. So the fire matters if they have any resistances to fire or susceptibility to fire. And the magic, like I said, usually not significant in and of itself, unless you're going up against ethereal or invulnerable targets. And then it also is armor piercing. So this will cut the protection value of the target by half when rolling for damage. So if it has 16 protection, this will on average do 0 or 1 or something like that damage. But if they only have 10 protection, then, this is doing, say, 3 damage. It's not amazing. Again, this is a level 1 evocation spell that you get to start with, but it's a different, depending on what you're fighting, one of those might be better than the other. And again, like I said, usually you don't send mages just out and about with you right at the start, because the research, you have to get new spells and better spells, but you can. You can. Oh, I did want to talk about one other thing there. Okay, so we can select cast a specific spell, and say we want him to just, at the start of battle, the first thing he does, I want him to cast Flying Shards. So that'll go at the top of this. And then we just want him to keep casting Flying Shards. That's all I want him to do. So we press X a few times to repeat it, and now he's filled up his script. We can no longer put in any single round orders. So then, that's, this is what's called on script. We have his spells all scripted. It's often pretty smart to script your mages, specifically with things that you want them to do for 5 rounds or so, or 5 casts. Then, usually what happens is you're going to put them on cast spells, or advance and cast spells. Cast spells means that they will typically stay exactly where you put them. They'll stay motionless, and they will just cast whatever spells they can that have valid targets based on sort of an internal algorithm that the game follows for spell casting. This is called going off script. So you have your 5 or less or whatever on script, and then the mage will go off script and cast whatever the game thinks is best. Advance and cast spells will do a similar thing, but they will try to move forward and get closer to the front, and thus shorter range spells will often be more viable for them to cast, but it is riskier. So your average mage, most of the time you might not want to do that, because they put themselves at risk by getting closer to the front of the field. But they might not also be able to do much if they don't move forward, if you have them too far back and just set on cast spells. So it depends on the situation and the rest of your army and things like that. Now, you can also go off script in other ways. So you can, so say we script and we click in Word of Power, which requires a level 3 holy level. This will show up in red, signifying that we can't actually cast it. As it is now, we cannot cast that spell. And so when he casts 3 flying shards and then gets to the next one, and then say we queue up another, so say we have that for some reason. He'll cast the 3 flying shards, most likely. When he gets to this, though, and he cannot cast it, he will then go off script for that slot. He'll cast something else, something that he can cast that has valid targets. He'll cast here, and then he'll go back on script, if possible, for the 5th slot. So you can temporarily go off script within here if you cannot cast the spell at that moment, or if there are no valid targets for the spell at that moment. So say that we clicked Stellar Decree instead. This is a banishment spell specifically used against undead. If we get to this point in the script and there are no undead either in the battle or within range or something like that, he won't cast it. He won't just throw away his round casting it. It'll instead just go off script for this round. He'll cast something else, and then it'll go back on script for the next line. So you can go temporarily off script in a couple different ways if there are no valid targets. And this also includes certain things like blessing. So, we have our prophet who can cast divine blessing, which will bless everything on the battlefield. If you instead do that and then have another priest for some reason that has blessing in his script, he won't waste his turn blessing things that are already blessed. He'll instead go off script. So off script is going to be inevitable. If you're bringing mages into battle, they will go off script because you can only do script so much. But it usually is worth it to script what you can, especially when it comes to buffs or summons or things like that. But just know that eventually you will lose control of what the mage is really doing, and there is no way to script it beyond that. There is a mod on the workshop that attempts to improve the off-script performance by giving them a slightly different algorithm of what spells to cast when off-script, but your mileage may vary with that one. Okay, so we could send mages out, but we want them to continue to do research. For Balthazar, he failed to find anything here, and that's not his fault, but we're going to move him on to Newland, and he'll search there, and then presuming that we win this battle, he'll then move over to Faircliff across the frozen river and search there as well. Now we could also, there is a command for auto site searching, and so they will continue to move from province to province as best they can, and then spend a round searching at each one before moving on. So that's often a very handy thing. If you know that you want to start site searching, you can just click on a mage in your capital and click Start Searching Auto, and they'll roam around and maybe find some stuff for you. But we'll have him move manually. Our scout is going to continue to explore the donut map, and so maybe we can see if we have a neighbor to the north. Because my plan currently is going to be moving east to the Land of Plenty and establishing a fort there. Because Ulm, as you can see, as you're well aware at this point, Ulm requires a lot of resources to make their units. And so for another fort, we want a position that's going to have a lot of resources around it, so we can pull in a lot of resources. And so I see that this is a farmland and river, so this is probably going to be a higher population, higher income, which is a good spot for a fort, because forts will only increase the income of the province they're built in. They don't increase the income around them. They pull in resources from around them, but they do not influence income around them. So it's on a farmland and river. It's going to have good income to be enhanced further by the fort. And then it's going to pull in at least 4 forests, which should have higher than average resources. So this is a good spot that we want to focus on and take. Okay, we're still not going to be done ending our turn, though, because we do have Construction 1 now. So we do have the ability to forge items. This is performed by mages and costs magic gems. So thanks to our Forges of Ulm special site in our capital, we've been making 5 earth gems per round, and we're up to 30 total, which is quite a bit. Additionally, our mages here, the priest smith, get an increase, or a discount They have a forge bonus of 1. So every magic item that they make will cost 1 less gem. And so if we go into their commands and we click Forge Magic Item, we then bring up the Forge Magic Item screen, and we can click through the different categories to see all the different magic items that this mage specifically can make. Which right now is not that many, because we only have Construction 1, we have the most minor of magic items possible. And if we look over and we say, look at the Black Steel Sword, we can see that this requires Earth Magic level 1 to create. It's a single-handed weapon. It costs 5 Earth Gems, and normally it will cost... normally it costs 5. But because we are Ulm, we actually get a national discount on this, and it costs 20% less. So it's going to cost 4 gems. And then if our mage makes it, he gets a discount of 1 gem. So this will only cost us 3 gems to make, which is quite affordable. We get a description of it, and then the stats. So this will do 9 magic slashing damage, and that is, again, modified by your strength. So you're going to add your strength directly on this. If you have 12 strength, this will do 21 magic slashing damage. It's going to increase the the commander's attack skill by 2, their defense skill by 2, and it has a length of 1, because it's just a normal sword. And so we could give this, we could make this, and give this to Raderick, who right now is using a Morning Star, and he would then have a magical weapon for anything that we encountered that would ignore or be resistant to mundane weapons. He would get an extra attack to increase his attack skill with the weapon to 16. And instead of -2 defense, he would actually get a defense bonus, making him even more hard to kill. So, as just a straight upgrade for Raderick, it's not a bad choice at all. It even has slashing damage, which, as I said, is usually the one you kind of want to gravitate towards if possible. And it's not like he's losing length in the process, because he's already got a length 1 Morning Star. So we can make that for him if we want, and it's pretty cheap. There's also a Fire Sword. So this is another option available to us. This costs requires Fire Magic level 1, 5 Fire Gems, no national discount for this one, but our smiths still get the universal discount. It's got 10 magic slashing damage as a base, with 1 attack value, 1 defense value, and length 1. It doesn't do any fire damage, it just does magic damage. So aside from the extra damage from the weapon itself, the Black Steel Sword is probably just going to be a better choice, because it has 1 more attack value, 1 more defense value. The 1 damage is probably not going to make that much of a difference. So yeah, we'd gravitate more towards the Black Steel Sword. But if you wanted to make the Fire Sword, you'll notice at the bottom it says not enough gems to forge this item. And that's true, because we do not have any fire gems. So, if we find a fire magic site, it will likely start providing us with fire gems slowly over the course of multiple turns. But if you really need gems now, like say you are hell-bent on making that fire sword, and you don't care about the costs, you want that fire sword, any mage can go in as long as they're at a laboratory. And also, I should mention that forging can also only be done if there's a laboratory there. The province that the mage is in. Laboratories are where all the magic stuff happens outside of battles. So, assuming you have a mage at a lab, he can go in and do the Alchemy command. Now, this does not take your turn, so you can just have them go into this menu at any time and just do this. And this allows you to exchange gems of one type and into gems of another type. But I should warn you that it is not cheap. It is not an efficient way to gain these gems. But it's done, relatively commonly, because you're often going to come into gems that aren't of the same value to you as some other type of gems. And so you may want to just get rid of them because you don't have a great use for them into something that you can use more readily. So we have uses for earth gems. So I'm not really going to do this, but I can show you. So the first thing you have to do is convert things into astral pearls. Astral pearls are basically the astral gem, but it's also kind of a universal gem. So right now we have 0 astral pearls, but if we click here, we can convert 2 earth gems into 1 astral pearl. And you can keep doing that as much as you want. It's not permanent. You know, you can keep going back. No, I completely just lied to you. It is permanent. So now I've basically just thrown away multiple earth gems. Okay. We're going to go and redo that. I started from scratch. Okay. Let's redo that. So, right, it is permanent. Unlike PD, which you can just take back as long as you don't end your turn. Alchemy is permanent. The problem is, I definitely knew that, and I just kept going with it. Right, so you were moving here, and you guys moved here, and then you were moving here. Okay. So, I should have just said it and not did it. But yeah, so, okay, so it's 2 gems for 1 astral pearl. And then it costs 2 astral pearls to get back 1 gem. So don't do what I did, because that's just throwing gems away for no reason. But in order to get our 5 fire gems out of earth gems, we'd have to spend 4 earth gems for every 1 fire. So I'd have to spend 20 earth gems to get our 5 fire gems that we want in order to make the fire sword. So it's a really inefficient way of doing things, but sometimes you just accumulate a lot of gems you have no uses for, and they can be better spent elsewhere. Or, you know, maybe, well, you want them to be spent elsewhere, let's put it that way. But we're not going to do that. And we're going to just take a quick look. We can't make any trinket double-handed weapons or ranged weapons, but we can make some new shields. So there's the Black Steel Tower shield, which all the black steel stuff is very, you know, unique to Ulm. It's not unique to Ulm, but it's our kind of specialty, so we get discounts on all the black steel stuff. And you see that this shield has 23 protection, which is very high. It does have -2 defense, but it has a 9 parry value and 2 encumbrance. It's also a magical shield. This makes it so that they are harder to break. Shields can be damaged or destroyed. If they are hit hard enough, with a big enough hit. I don't remember the exact numbers. I believe to damage a shield, it has to be hit with a single hit that is at least 3 times its protection value, I believe. So for a shield like this, it would have to be hit very, very hard to damage it. And even, I think it's 5 times to actually be destroyed. Magic shields, however, if they are damaged miraculously, they will just restore themselves at the end of the battle. But if they are destroyed, then they are destroyed. But you don't have to worry about something with this big of a shield. Usually. There's also the Kite Shield, which has a 29 protection value. Very, very, very high. With -2 defense, 8 parry, 2 encumbrance. So it's a little less capable of parrying. You're going to have a little bit lower of a defense value overall. But anything that does hit the shield is almost certainly going to be stopped. And we can also make a Black Steel Helmet. This is a 24 protection helmet with no defense penalty and no encumbrance. This is a really, really nice defensive helmet. Now, Raderick doesn't really need that kind of stuff because he already has really high defensive stuff, but I mean, his helmet is worse. It is 1 less protection and it has -1 defense. So if we wanted to get his defense value even higher, we could just make him that helmet, especially because it's really cheap. There's also armor. So there's a Black Steel Plate. This gives +4 hit points to the commander if they wear it. Max hit points. It has 17 protection on the body, -1 defense, 2 encumbrance, and a map movement penalty of 2. And it's also a magical piece of armor. Then there's the Full Plate. Same +4 hit points, but 24 protection, -3 defense, 4 encumbrance, 6 map movement penalty. Now that one I'm not so sure about because he already basically is wearing that. So that's probably not worth making for him. There's no boots we can make, but there is a couple items. A Ring of Fire, which gives plus 15 fire resistance, and the Pendant of Courage, the plus 5 morale value, along with your mount. And we cannot make any horse bardings or animal bardings. So, okay. So if we wanted to make some little upgrades for him, we could make a black steel sword. And we could make a black steel kite shield. Tower shields cannot be used by mounted troops, so we could just give him this kite shield if we want. And then we also could have a third mage make this helmet for him if we want. So that's going to cost us a total of 9 earth gems. It'll take up 3 mages' turns for this round. So they will not be researching, they'll be foraging instead. And then those items will actually be placed in the laboratory. So it'll be placed kind of in our pool of items, which is this screen. And so in order for a commander to take those items, they either have to be handed to him by another commander if he's away from a laboratory, or if he's on a laboratory, he can just take it into his own inventory. But there is magical ways of transporting items, but I won't get into that. So usually magic items are just picked up at any laboratory, and even if I went out to the Barren Crags now and I built a laboratory there, I could then pick up these magic items. I don't know exactly how that works, but it's magic. So we could then, instead of moving out, we could just wait here. We could go on patrol and just wait here in order to pick up these items, just to show how it changes his stats and stuff. And so we'll make one more of these and a couple more of these guys. Okay. And so that's foraging. And as you go up in construction, you're just going to get access to more and more items, and it all operates on those same principles. That it always requires mages, it requires a certain level of paths and certain gem counts, and it has to be done at a lab, and it requires 1 round. Every item requires 1 round, no matter the level of it. Okay? So I think with that, we will end this turn. Okay. So now, if we right-click on Raderick, we see here his line of equipment. So right now he's completely unequipped as far as magic items is concerned. He obviously has equipment that he comes with, but this is all his special magic stuff. So you click on any of these slots and it'll open up your inventory. And then now we see the few things we made. So if we click on the Black Steel Sword, he has now equipped the Black Steel Sword. It has replaced his Morning Star. It does not replace his Lance. So there are certain weapons or certain items or certain attacks that a character might have that are just kind of like innate. They can't really be removed or they can't be swapped out. But we did swap out his Morning Star, so that's no longer in effect. But if we were, for example, to remove it, he would still have his Morning Star. He doesn't throw it away or anything. So it's just replaced temporarily. And so now we can see his Black Steel Sword. He has 16 attack with it, 24 slashing magic damage with that, and it brings his total defense up to 20. Okay, so then we can also equip the helmet and the shield. And now we see that he has a total of 25 protection, 26 on the head, 25 on the body, and 23 defense. And if anything were to hit his shield, which is going to be if any of the dice rolls are like 15 through 28, they have to go through 29 plus, say, 23 protection. So 52 protection total. He is now a very, very defensible target. And he can deal out some magic damage, and some very high damage at that, as well as a nice lance charge that he gets. Now, his unicorn, his mount, does not get access to many of those benefits, because that was all kind of for him. But his mount is still pretty strong. You can make magical barding that might be more protective, and at level 3 construction, we can make black steel barding for his unicorn if we want. But since most of the hits are going to go towards him anyways, he's a very potent hero currently for fighting independent armies. And at this point, he probably could go... I could send Raderick and his few Black Knights that he has, And I could send him to probably take Faircliff by himself. I'm not going to do that, but I would say he probably could succeed at that. So we'll add these extra troops we just made this last turn, and now we will move on to Faircliff. And we're continuing along our research. It's slowed down a little bit because we made some magic items, but you see our Earth Gem count is going up more and more because we keep getting 5 every turn, so we could make a lot of magic items. And so if we wanted, we could actually now... I don't want to slow down research anymore, but you could make another... You can make a Black Lord, which is like sort of a slightly lighter version of Raderick, and you could equip him with the same stuff, and he would be pretty strong and powerful, and maybe you could send him out with a group of Black Knights to maybe clear some stuff, and that's what's called a Thug. But, again, you know, don't be overconfident, because a character like that... 5 knights, like they do lack a little bit in their ability to deal with large numbers. They are going to get surrounded, their defense scores are going to go down, and they're just not going to be able to kill that many things that quickly. So I wouldn't be able to just send 5 Black Knights into this group of 140 and trust that I'll win. But 30 things? Yeah, probably. So that's just one of those things you're just kind of going to have to get a feel for it. And it's really unnecessary to do stuff like that. I mean, it's very cool, but it's very unnecessary when you're just playing a beginner game like this. So don't sweat about that too much. So that's why we're sending Raderick, new and improved, along with the whole army. But we are going to set these guys to research again. So now we're up to 55 points per month. So next turn we will get Construction 2. Okay. And we're going to set Balthazar to search for more magic sites here in Newland. We're going to have Sigbert continue to scout. And is there anything else that I could talk about? No, but I will be able to talk about it next turn. Good. Okay. You'll notice we are building up a large treasury. And there is, you know, we can build temples with that, and we do want to do that. But, again, I just want to get a little bit more research before I start taking mage priests off of that roll. So we're just going to hit end turn here. All right, so once again, Balthazar found nothing in Newland, so he's really having some poor luck. And we can view this battle in Faircliff. All right, so now we're going to see 2 rounds go by. And we'll see all these things, all these units start moving, but we'll notice that these Black Knights do not move because they're set to guard Raderick, who is holding a few times, just to be extra certain. So they're starting to move. He's still holding. He's still holding. He's still holding. They're waiting on him. And then they're off to the races now. All right. So here they're making contact. And again, you know, these things have 16 slashing damage. They're really going to struggle to break through our armor in large numbers. Raderick now rushing in very fast. He's faster than the other Black Knights, so he's getting first contact, but he's okay with that. And now the Black Knights charging in with their lances and really making short work of the back line as the rest of the infantry come to support. And that was obviously a very quick and easy victory for the forces of Ulm. And Raderick will continue to chase them off. Okay. They also had an enemy mage here, a Bear Tribe Shaman with level 1 nature. So that's why he was animating the trees that were on the field to try and attack us. But a tree doesn't stand much chance. Okay. So we lost nothing on that one. And Raderick got 7 kills by himself. But the Black Knights as a group also got 10. So everyone did quite well. Okay. So we're going to continue moving towards the Land of Plenty. So we're going to move into the next group. And we're going to have... Okay, yeah, because I want to demonstrate a mage in combat, just so we can kind of see. So I'm going to have Balthazar move in. I'm going to have a different mage move to Faircliff to search there. And we're going to script Balthazar in combat. Alright, so now that we hit Construction level 2, we got a spell called Temper Armors. This requires level 2 Earth. We can see it has a range of 15, which is relatively short. 100% casting time, so you're not going to get too many of them off. Area effect 5+, so if he was level 3 Earth, we don't have Summon Earth power yet, but if we did, this would be increased by an extra 1 to 6, but 5 is fine. And it has Precision 0, and that does matter for buff spells like this, because you can kind of miss, you can not get perfect coverage of your buff spells, so that does matter. And it has a fatigue cost of 30. Since we're level 2 Earth, it's going to cost us 30 plus our spellcasting encumbrance. This doesn't affect enemy units, because it's a buff spell, but what it does is it grants +3 protection to all armor parts. So this is going to affect 5 squares, theoretically, assuming we landed on 5 of our squares, of our units, and all of them will get +3 protection to their head and body. So this is a very commonly used spell for any nation that has access to Earth magic, and assuming that they have soldiers that are wearing armor. Because if you just have like your horses, or if you have alligators or elephants or something like that that doesn't wear armor and just has natural protection, this will not increase that. This is just if they're wearing actual armor pieces. So we want to cast this. And we'd like to cast this on everybody. But remember, we can only hold for 2 rounds on our infantry, on our normal troops, on our units. So usually you only have time to cast most buffing spells for 2 rounds. So we're going to be able to cast it twice. Depending, especially because our troops are a bit slower, we actually might be able to get it off a 3rd time. And that can happen. As they're moving, we might be able to just clip them and get for a 3rd spell casting to give some of them more some temper armor. Now after that, we're going to be kind of at the back of the battlefield. And so there isn't much else that I can do from that far back, because the battle's going to kind of take place somewhat in the middle. And flying shards might not reach. It might. 35, it might. But we could just set him to advance and cast spells at that point. And so we could script further, but he may not actually cast anything because nothing's in range. Or he might just cast temper armors on, like, himself or something like that. So we're just going to set 3 times and then advance. And for his position, we're going to put him, like, right here. I mean, we're far back enough that it usually doesn't matter. But if you're going to start closer to the right side, closer to the enemy, putting your mages too far forward does mean that they are at risk of catching a stray arrow. That the archers quickly move into position and lob arrows into your main line here. Mages can catch that. So you kind of want them to be close enough to cast their spells and buff their spells and things like that. But they might be at risk of catching some arrows or something like that. And there are certain ways, of course, to alleviate that. We could put some certain items on him to make him more defensible. You might not want to put heavy armor on him, but there are other things. Or he could cast certain spells to make him a bit stronger. He is wearing ringmail hauberk, so he could cast temper armors on himself to make this protection 13 on his body instead of 10. But how much you protect your mages and what ways you protect your mages, that's up to you. We could give him some bodyguards, and I suppose that's not a bad idea. So we could take just a few knights here. Oh, that's right. We're not actually on... So we can't transfer because we're not on the same province. But when we get back together, I can give him some few knights, some few infantry, and put them on guard commander. And they will just stand by him in case anybody tries to mess with him. It won't do much to prevent him from catching an arrow, of course, but that's life. Okay. The other thing I want to do this turn, now that we have construction 2, is if we go into one of our mages... into their options, instead of forging magic items, we can cast a ritual spell. So this can again only be done at a laboratory and only with mages. And these are the out of combat spells, the ritual spells, the ones with the pentagram next to their name in the magic list. So all of these are going to require a certain level and type of magic path. In this case, for this one, it requires 2 earth and gems. All ritual spells will require gems of some kind. So this one requires 4 earth gems to cast. And if we right-click on Clockwork Soldiers, we can see that it will create a number of effects of 10 plus. So again, modified by your level. If you have more, this will be 1 for every 2 extra levels. So even a high-level Earth Mage is not going to get too many more out of this. And this will summon Clockwork Soldiers. So this is a ritual summon spell. And those can summon units or commanders. Certain ones will summon special commanders for you as well. But this will summon 10 Clockwork Soldiers for us. And these will just be units that we have available in our garrison. They can go into squads. They will fight on the battlefield, all that sort of stuff. And there are a lot of different type of summonable units and commanders that you can get if you look through all the different ritual spells available to you. Now, not every ritual spell, of course, is a summon. There are many, many that are not summons. But this is what's available to us with Construction 2. And we have a lot of Earth Gems. And so I'm just going to cast this just so you can see what it's like. So that's going to cost... We get no discount on this or anything like that. So it just costs 4 Earth Gems. And we could have all our mages actually do this all in one go. And if we have every mage do that, you know, we'd get 60 Clockwork Soldiers in one turn. We wouldn't be doing any research that turn, and it would cost us 24 total gems, but, you know, that is an option available to you. So it's not just one mage per laboratory at a time or anything like that. You could have everyone do something. Okay, so we're going to have him do that. Ritual spells are not complicated. There are many, many of them that all can do very different things. The Conjuration, like I said, it's going to be a lot of summons, different creatures, bears, or... yetis or things like that, griffins, drakes, all sorts of stuff. And construction, a lot of the rituals are also going to be like mechanical constructions, like Clockwork Soldiers or mechanical men, golems, things like that. Those work similarly. Then you have like evocation rituals, and some of these are actually going to be the ability to cast like a hurricane on a remote province. So up to 5 provinces away, you can cause a massive hurricane that will increase unrest there and kill off part of the population. So there's a lot of different things you can do against other nations to kind of mess with them and destabilize them and hurt them in different ways. Fires from afar will actually cause like a big a bunch of flame bolts to fall onto an enemy army and potentially doing a bunch of damage to their soldiers. This also notes that it cannot target caves or underwater provinces. So there are some restrictions sometimes. This only has a range of 3 provinces, so it's not super far. And it's anonymous, which means that the targeting nation cannot be certain who cast it, or sometimes even if it was cast at all, or if it was just a random event from the game. So this will not say that, oh, Ulm sent fires from afar to Zabalba or something like that. It'll just, you know, bring up a message saying that this happened. There's different... There's some conjuration stuff that's in, like, enchantment. Like, this lets you summon clay men, you know, enchanted clay figures. There's vile water that lets you summon a gelatinous cube. But there's also cloud trapeze, which lets an air mage actually basically teleport or fly across the map. Now, this does have to be cast at a lab, and so if you move 5 provinces and there's not a lab there, you either have to start walking normally or build a lab there to use it again. And that's also true for the teleport ritual. So there's so many. I mean, there's 1,000 different spells, and many of them are ritual spells that do all sorts of different stuff. In single player, you're probably not going to be using a lot of the things like Hurricane or anything that kind of messes with nations in specific ways, and that's usually because the AI just isn't really bothered by stuff like that. It doesn't really affect their game plan or how they're operating in a significant way. But there are plenty of ritual spells that are very powerful and very potent, depending on where you what nation you're playing and what your situation is. And there's some, like, if you go into alteration, so there's like which one did I want to say? Mother Oak is a good example. So this is one that many nations will try to strive for pretty quickly. This is a global enchantment, so this usually means that only one of this specific enchantment can be active at one time. So whoever gets the Mother Oak going first, whoever casts this first, they get the Mother Oak. No one else can cast it until it's dispelled. And it has to be dispelled in a couple different ways using other ritual spells. And so for global enchantments, you put in, this one requires level 5 nature on your mage and 50 nature gems. So it's very expensive. And when you cast a global enchantment, you can put in additional gems over that cost. So you can put in more and more gems. And that makes it harder to dispel, because whoever's trying to dispel it has to put in enough gems to counter that and beat that. So you can put in a lot of gems if you really wanted to have some staying power and not be dispelled. But again, for the AI, I've never ever seen them dispel a single global enchantment, so usually you don't have to worry about that. But in multiplayer, that is a bigger concern. And so what Mother Oak will do is you put it in a province, whatever province you cast it on will have the Mother Oak, and it will increase growth in that province by +2 and grant you 10 nature gems every month. So it's like a super magic site for nature. So there are things like that, and there's a couple of versions of that for different magic paths and things. And so there's so many spells. There's so many spells. Okay, so we're gonna cast Clockwork Soldiers, and we see up here we have found Phlegra. So we've entered into Phlegra's territory, so we know that that's a neighbor that we have to the northwest. We know Zabalba is down underground, but it doesn't seem like he's come up from there. And we are continuing to move east, where we will have another neighbor. I believe that is just about everything. Now you'll notice that I still have left 2 spots not claimed as part of my cap circle. And that's not ideal, obviously. We do want to complete that. But there is also, this sort of you gotta make some tough decisions. Like, yes, I would benefit from clearing out this cap circle and making Ulm a stronger capital for recruitment, but I also definitely want this to be a fort. And if I spend time clearing this out and someone else swoops in and takes a land of plenty from me, I either have to abandon that or go to war with them in order to get it back. And so it's a lot easier if I can just get there first and establish a fort, and then it's mine. It's a lot harder for them to take from me. And then I can come back and clear out my cap circle at my leisure. Now, if we had multiple armies, then we could be doing 2 things at once. It is a strategy to just have one massive army that just stomps everything it can, everything it comes across. That's called a Doomstack or a Death Ball. And it can be very potent, especially against the AI, because they often will not have much counter for something like that. But there are many, many times where you're going to want to be doing multiple things or moving in multiple directions. Or you might be having 2 different wars going on at the same time, and your Doomstack can't answer everything in time. It's especially with Ulm, it's very slow for us to move across the map. And so that's usually where you might want a second army, and that's where you might even want a thug, for example, or a thug group. So, we see the Black Knight, or the Black Lord, has a map move of 16, and the Black Knights have 16. So as a pack, if they were a small pack, or not even that small of a pack, like you could just have the Black Lord and 30 Black Knights, I suppose. They could move around the map a bit quicker than my normal big army that's always going to be moving at speed 8. And sometimes you'll have, like if Raderick was by himself, he would have a speed of 24. Or you could have, big powerful commanders by themselves that can fly and have a speed of 30 or something like that, and can really, or even teleport or cloud trapeze around the map. And so that's usually where thugs come into play, is when you need to quickly retake territory from your enemy, or maybe even harass your enemy by quickly taking some of his lightly defended territory. That's where thugs can come into play. But again, that's really just a bit more of an advanced technique. Do not fret about that. Just focus even on just using your Doomstack for a while, just to get the hang of it. But getting a second army online is not that bad of an idea. We are continuing to make units in Ulm, and we don't need that many units in order to have a somewhat capable army. So eventually, if we wanted to keep doing stuff in this direction, eventually we could just make another Commander of Ulm here, throw all these units into his squads, and clear out the rest of our cap circle. But let's deal with Tiny Willow and see our mage in action first. Okay, so we cast Clockwork Soldiers, so we get a message about that. Our spy witnessed another battle between Phlegra, who you can see has some big scary Cyclops warriors that swing for 34 damage, very painful. That would definitely hurt our guys in our armor. And he fought against the Independents and won. And then our battle in Tiny Willow. Let's take a look. Alright, so we're focusing here on the mage. We can see he's going to cast Temper Armors. So he just did. He's now going to cast it again. Okay, so two things there. First, we want to look at him. We see that his fatigue now is at 75. So that built up a lot of fatigue just casting a couple spells. And that's because that spell costs him 30 fatigue. And that cost his spellcasting encumbrance of 5. So an extra 5 plus 5 for the two spells. So yeah, he's already a bit fatigued from casting that. And if you cast it a third time, he's going to be over 100. And then he'll be unconscious for a little bit while he recovers. Now, one thing that we didn't do is that we didn't bless him. And he can bless himself. He's a priest, so he could cast Blessing, and he might do that when he goes off script. He probably will. And that will give him the reinvigoration from our Blessing, and the Farcaster and things like that, the things we pick specifically for our mages. And so it would have been a probably good idea to just have him cast Blessing first, but that does take time. And remember, we only have a couple of rounds to buff our infantry with our mages before they start moving away. So that's sort of, you really got to be very picky about what you do in the first couple rounds with your mages. So he's at 75 fatigue. He can go unconscious from spellcasting. It's going to happen all the time. They will do that. And as long as they don't go over 200, there's no risk to you outside of the fact that you're a sitting duck here. If we look at our units that got buffed, you see that their protection value is now 22 compared to the normal value of 19. So they have gotten the increased protection there. And as I said, every point kind of is a significant difference. So bumping up 3 protection on many of your units is quite significant. Now, unfortunately, Temper Armors doesn't cover a large amount of effect, and we only have one mage casting it, so most of our units are not going to have any benefit. But he did cast it a third time there to get some extra units. So, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of better versions of Temper Armors in a second. But okay, so we get another encounter, and this is going to go very similarly to the other ones we've done. These tribal warriors do not stand much of a chance against such a well-armored troop. And Raderick went straight to the back and killed the commander. And so now they're all running, and we're in the way, so we're going to just stop them and kill as many as we can for sport, of course. And that's battle. Okay. So we actually did lose an infantry from that, which is somewhat surprising. There was a barbarian chief in there, and he can swing for 25 slashing, and he has berserkers, so that if he takes an injury, or if he gets hit, that'll actually increase to 28 damage. So he could definitely kill us, and he did kill one. And you can see they also, this was a friendly fire one. We only lost one, so this must have been he killed one of his own people by throwing a javelin. That'll happen. Okay. So now, if we go into our garrison of Ulm, we will see some new additions. Clockwork Soldiers. So, looking over the stats, we can see these have 7 hit points, which is pretty low. It's below average. But they have 18 protection, which is very above average. They have 13 magic resistance, which is decent. 50 morale, though, so they will never rout unless the whole army routs. They have slightly above average strength, attack skill, defense skill. Low precision, but that doesn't matter because they don't have any ranged weapons, and a very average combat speed. Looking over all their traits, we can see they're poor amphibians, which means that they actually can go underwater and fight underwater battles if they're led by a similar commander that is also able to go underwater. They are shock resistant 15, so they will reduce any damage from lightning and shock by 15 points, plus a 30% reduction of any remaining damage. So they're very hard to hurt with any lightning attacks or things like that. They also are the similar resistance to fire attacks and cold attacks, and a 25-point resistance to poison. So if 25 points plus a 50% reduction, it would be very, very difficult to poison these things, obviously, because they're just mechanical constructs. They're also magical beings. This means that they have to be commanded by any sort of mages or anyone that can command magic creatures. So that is an important distinction. Our normal military commanders cannot lead these things. It has to be led by a mage. They're inanimate, which affects certain things. They can't be put to sleep. They can't benefit from regeneration. They can't be life drained, stuff like that. They're also immune to diseases and any affliction healing effects. So they can get afflictions, but they can't be healed from them. They don't need to eat, so they cost no supply. They're mindless, which affects certain things such as charm, mind burn, several spells, a lot of spells, and they also can't be placed in the same squad as a non-mindless unit. It's two distinct things that have to be kept separate. They also have dark vision 100, so they can see perfectly in the darkness. If you go underground, it will be dark, and that does affect units, often somewhat significantly if they don't have a form of dark vision. And also they have exhaustion, which is a special thing, usually unique to these clockwork guys, that pretty much every round they will increase their fatigue automatically. You'll note they have 0 encumbrance, and 0 encumbrance means that they will never get exhausted from melee combat. And there are certain units, certain commanders that have 0 encumbrance, and it can be very handy. But these have a special thing because they're wound up, you know, they run on clockwork, and so it wears down over time, and that's represented by this, where they automatically get 10 fatigue every turn. So they're not very long lasting in combat. You're probably going to want to put them closer to the front, and then hope that the job gets done before they go unconscious and wind down. They have a 17 slashing damage sword hand attack with 11 attack value, and they have a buckler, only 2 parry, 14 protection, but it helps to prevent some archery stuff. They're not amazing, but it's a very low-level, cheap, plentiful summon that our mages could produce. And the really nice thing there is that they can go underwater. And so if we wanted to venture into the ocean and actually start claiming some ocean provinces, that is an avenue that we could utilize. But we would need to find a way to make a commander that could breathe underwater. And there are certain provinces, often along the coasts or things like that, where you can recruit like a merman captain or something, something to that effect. So you can recruit underwater units and commanders from certain provinces if you take them over. So that's often a way to do that, and then we could have him potentially lead the clockworks, but they are magical creatures, so that's a little trickier. If we had access to any water magic, we could make an item. And if you go into, just quickly, if you go into Forge Items, I didn't mention this, but if you go into Forge Items and you click Control A, that will show you every item that's in the game. So you can just look over all of them. And you can also filter these. And again, I'll remind you about the question mark bringing up the hotkeys. So you can actually filter all these things. And if you press, say, water, that will show you all the water-related items that require water path. And so here's like a ring of water breathing. So if we had a water mage, even level 1, he could make a ring of water breathing, which we could equip on any commander, and that would allow them to just breathe underwater. Now, that doesn't make them, like, perfectly good at fighting underwater or anything, but it allows them to breathe underwater. So things like that. And that just, again, the real flexibility and countless possibilities that Dominions offers. There's just all sorts of stuff like that. Okay, so we made the clockworks. I don't really need to make any more at the moment. but I could. I could keep making that. And in fact, you can set up a monthly ritual so that he will just automatically keep queuing up this action over and over and over until he runs out of gems. Here, Clodomir is going to be searching for magic sites. And now we can actually give Balthazar just a handful of guards. So now he's got a few guards with him. So he can be maybe a bit further up, something like that. But we're feeling pretty good about where we're at. And if you look at construction, you notice that we're going to construction level 4. And that's because at level 4, you get another spell called Soldiers of Steel. If you look at this, it still has range 15. It's still 100% casting time. But now this has an area of effect of 20 plus. So it's 4 times more effective at being cast and covering an area than Temper Armors. It does have twice the fatigue cost. And also it's going to be much harder to reduce that because it's a level 3 Earth spell. So we actually need Summon Earth Power in order to cast it. Now there is one other thing. And I didn't really talk about gems in combat. We already went over using gems outside of combat as part of foraging or casting ritual spells at laboratories, but gems can also be used in combat. And many spells you'll see here, even in combat, will require gems. So, such as if we look at Nest of Asps, for example. This will conjure a Nest of Asps in combat. It's a combat spell. And this requires, to cast it, 1 nature gem. And so you can and often will in the later game bring gems into battle. But to do that, you have to be at a laboratory or they have to be handed off from another commander. You're going to go into the commander overview here and you're going to click on this, Personal Magic Gems. And that'll bring up this screen. It'll show you can select a different commander here if you want to transfer to or from another commander. And then if you're at a lab, it'll show you your lab supply, your total supply from any lab. And then you can just add earth gems like that. And now he's carrying 5 earth gems to be cast in combat. And so if you then go into scripting, you can have him select a spell. If it has gem cost, he'll spend it. When he goes off script, he will continue to use gems if he has them available, unless you click Conservative Magic Gem Usage, in which case he will use fewer or no gems in order to reduce fatigue from spells. And that's another thing. Gems in combat have to be spent on certain spells, as you just saw with Nest of Asps, but they can also be used in order to increase temporarily your mage's level in that path. So if we had a mage, so if we had Balthazar and he had an earth gem, he could spend that earth gem in order to cast a spell as if he were a level 3 earth mage. And I don't know what the official term for that is. I call it upcasting. But you can do that, I believe, a number of points equal to your base magic level. So I think he could spend 2 gems to go up to 4, but I'm not certain about that. Usually you're not going to do it more than 1 level. But you can upcast in order to cast a spell at a higher level. And so you actually could, there are certain spells, such as, let's see here, summon an earth elemental. So this is a combat spell to summon a big earth elemental. It's a very nice spell. All the elemental summon spells are very nice. So this requires level 3 earth and 1 earth gem. So our level 2 guy could bring along 2 gems, 1 to upcast to become a level 3 temporarily, and then 1 to cast the gem, the elemental spell itself, which requires 1 gem. So he could do that. Now, obviously, summon earth power is a better way to get to level 3 earth because that lasts the whole battle. But you can do this with all sorts of magic and all sorts of spells, and it's often kind of a nice way to upcast into a higher level spell you wouldn't normally have access to, that might be really impactful. think there was something else I was going to mention there, but yeah, if you have just one earth, say you have a mage that only has one earth and he can't cast summon earth power, you can bring along one gem that allows him to upcast and cast summon earth power, and then he'll be at level 2 earth for the rest of the battle, because this gives +1 earth bonus. So that's often done if you only have one earth. But, you know, it does require you to kind of manually move gems around and shuffle them around and bring them along into battle. There are certain items that can be made that will generate temporary magic gems in battle. So if we go into construction and we go here, this is a very good example, right? This is going to be one of the most common, readily available ones. It's called Fire in a Jar. So this requires level 1 fire magic to forge 5 fire gems, provides +5 cold resistance, and 1 temporary fire gem. So if you equip this on a mage, every time he goes into battle, he will have 1 free fire gem that he can spend in battle. And so this is often used for summoning fire elementals or casting Phoenix power, because Phoenix power is another thing similar to Earth power, but for fire. So if we give the Fire in a Jar to all our mages, they can upcast into Phoenix power, because this is 2 fire and they only have 1 normally, and then they will have +1 fire magic bonus for the rest of the battle. So you can do things like that. There are a handful of temporary gem generators, as they're called. You can look those up if you're really interested. But Fire in a Jar is usually going to be the most accessible one. Unfortunately, Earth does not have one that's really readily accessible. The only one that there is requires blood and earth as well. So it's not super easy to get. Okay, so that's gems in battle. Soldiers of Steel, we do want to cast. You know, we do want to get that. We're working towards it. But we have to, once we get it, we can't cast it without a gem. So we want to get Summon Earth Power, so then we can always Summon Earth Power and then cast Soldiers of Steel maybe once or twice. Okay, so that's all that. We are now going to move on to Land of Plenty. It's still here for the taking, so we're just going to move on. We have Clodomir searching there. We're going to just keep researching. We're not going to cast anything else, and just keep building up our garrison. All of our mages can lead up to 30 magical beings, so they can lead up to 30 clockwork soldiers if we want. And we will continue moving Sigbert northwards. And that's going to be it. Okay, so he searched Faircliff, didn't find anything. 2 of our crippled units unfortunately died during the march, and we had another battle in the Land of Plenty, which we don't really need to watch, but we can just kind of fast forward through this, because I don't think there will be any great losses on our side from this. You know, our Black Knights are really good. Raderick basically will almost never get injured from fights like this. You know, he'll generate a bit of fatigue, but the chance of him actually getting hurt in the very short time that he's attacking is pretty slim, but it is possible. It is always possible. So there you go. We lost nothing, and we took over Land of Plenty. So now we can see this has a massive population for an independent province of 17,000. It's an ideal size for about 10,000, so it's not as big as it could be. It's just way, like, overpopulated almost, but that's good for us because it's still growing. And it has 124 income right now, and that's going to be even more because it's not even in our Dominion yet. So once we get it in our Dominion, and it's going to get our nice order scales to increase by 6%, and our nice growth scales to increase the growth even more, this is going to become a very nice place. And you can see how many connections are available to it. So it's going to be pulling resources in from all of these spots once we control them all and have a fort here. Now we do see that there is a non-independent flag here. This belongs to the nation of Nidavanger. So he has taken the God's Two Mountains. He was very close to getting into Land of Plenty, but we took it from him. And we can see just based on the name here that this is his capital right here. So we are very close to his capital. If he was not a defensive AI, I would probably tell you almost assuredly that building a fort here will cause him to go to war. He will take great offense to that. So you have to weigh that in your decisions if you are ready to kind of go to war with a nation or not. I'm not worried, so we are just going to build a fort here. Now we could... Building a fort... Yeah, I should talk about this. So if you go into any commander's actions, you can do construct building, and it'll give you probably a few options. So there's not many building types in Dominions. It's not really that kind of game. But we can build palisades, which is the lowest level of fort. You have to upgrade it from that point. Once it's built, then you have to spend more time and money to upgrade it. But palisade is usually the lowest level you can build. We can build a temple, and that's because he is a priest. And then if we go into our mage instead, you'll see that he can also build a lab because he's a mage. So anybody can build palisades, priests can build temples, and mages can build labs. So we want to build a palisade here, but you'll see that it takes a long time. It takes 5 months to build. Labs and temples take 1 turn. Palisades take a long time to prevent you from just springing up forts everywhere. So it's a significant time investment where you kind of just have to stand here somewhat out in the open and you put in 1,000 gold and you spend time and you're kind of, a sitting duck. And if anyone comes along and attacks you, especially if you just leave one guy here to build it, it's very easy to just get killed or driven away, and you lose the province and you lose all the money you put into the palisade. So it's be aware that it is quite possible to have that investment just thrown away or to lose a commander or something like that. So usually if you're going to build a palisade somewhere, you either want to leave some troops there with it or increase the PD value of the province to somewhat protect them, or to at least dissuade the AI or something from attacking. Now we could have our regular army go sit here and wait and protect it and build it, but we're going to be a little riskier than that. We're just going to build a scout right here, because this province can build independent scouts. And a scout can build a whole palisade by himself. He doesn't need any assistance. So he just has to sit here for 5 months, 5 turns, and do it. And we are going to take this opportunity then to continue to clear out the cap circle. Not the cap circle, but the province circle here all around. So we can get all these different provinces and make sure the resource value of Land of Plenty is as high as it can be. Now, we are going to be a little gimped, because we can't take God's Tomb Mountains without going to war. If we attack this, we will be flagged as at war with him, and then he will freely attack us. Here's Phlegra's capital. I'm not going to go into it, because probably that's the most likely spot I'm going to get caught. But we see Phlegra's capital is up there. Vladimir will continue to move. And we are continuing to recruit out of Ulm. And that's basically going to be the turn. I suppose at this point we could start building some temples. So let's send out another mage smith. Mage priest. Priest smith. There it is. I got it. We're going to send him out to Pavonia. And he's just going to go through and he's going to go to each province and just build a temple. Because we want to have basically a temple in every province, assuming that we can protect those provinces. And right now, they're not at much risk. I don't know if I never really mentioned it. I think I just forgot. But independent armies like this will never move. They will never move. They'll never take over your stuff. There are certain events that can cause a roaming independent army to appear. And you will know this because the flag will not be whole. It'll be like a torn flag in the wind. It'll be very obvious once you see it. It's probably going to be like a little barbarian horde. But that does move around and will take over new provinces from you. So you need to be kind of on top of that. But anything that's just a normal independent army like this will never move. And while we're at it, I think we're going to increase our PD now because we have quite a bit of money. So we're going to go to just 11 on all. Just to be safe. Okay. And then we can end our turn. Alright, so we had another battle. Well, we won't watch this one, but we'll just click on the results. We see that we lost 2 more infantry. I'm not sure exactly to what. since they only got 1 kill. But, yeah, I mean, it's an acceptable loss, and we got the Gladewood, which we can see also gives us 113 income and 55 resources. So the palisade that we're building is going to have a very low administration value. The capital city, the citadel here, is a 60 administration. That's about the highest you'll ever get. Whereas the palisade we're building, I believe, has an administration value of 15. So it's only going to be drawing 15% of this number, these resources, into itself. But drawing from all the different surrounding provinces, and we're going to upgrade the palisade to like a fortress and stuff to increase that value. It'll get there in no time. And we're just going to continue to move through and sweep through all these independent armies, because they don't pose much threat to us. Vladimir is going to search Tiny Willow for magic sites, and Vitiges will construct a temple here. So it costs 600 gold, and that's his turn. Okay, and then Marius, our new scout, is going to, with his bare hands, build an entire palisade here. And you can see it's administration 15, has a 50% recruitment point bonus, a 0-point commander point bonus, 200 defense, 150 siege supplies, and takes 5 months to build. So a lot of that stuff just has to do with recruitment or if it's under siege. Needless to say, a palisade is not a super defensible structure, but I guess it doesn't let me talk about sieging. So in order to have an enemy take over a province that has some sort of fortification like that, whether it be a palisade or a capital citadel, they have to wear down the siege walls. They have to wear down the walls of the fort. And that's a bit of a formula based on the total unit value that's doing the besieging based on their strength. So you see our scout, he has a value of 1 siege strength. So every single unit and commander has a siege strength value and a siege defense value. And so basically, I'm pretty sure it's just siege strength minus siege defense, and that will lower the defense number. So this has 200 defense. So if an army comes along and it has 500 siege strength, and you have 300 siege defense inside of the fort, those walls will be broken down in 1 turn. So basically, as soon as they arrive and they defeat the provincial defense, it'll do that siege check, and assuming no other values are in there, the walls will be breached right away, and then the following turn, they can storm the castle and go inside to actually take it over with like a big final battle. If they don't instantly breach it, then it just reduces the defense value of the walls by a certain amount based on the number, and it might take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 turns maybe to break it down. And there is obviously, if you don't have enough siege strength to even beat out the defense number or the siege defense number, you might not harm the walls at all. And it'll tell you this every turn. It'll say, we're besieging this castle, but we are currently not harming the walls at all. Or we are besieging the castle and the walls are moderately damaged. It won't tell you the exact number, so you can never be quite sure, but you'll get a general idea of how well you're doing against the walls. For those, and you can, the besieging force can add reinforcements and just keep introducing troops from other provinces to keep adding onto the siege. But the one being besieged cannot really add anything. If you're being besieged, you can't recruit any units out of there. I believe you don't get any of the income from that fort or anything like that. And you can, if you have forces inside, you can try to break the siege by riding out and meeting them. And any troops that you try to bring in, they will attack the force that's outside the walls. So you can't add forces into the walls except through teleport, I believe. So if you want to break the siege from outside, you move troops in. You can order your troops inside to break the siege at the same time as you move troops in, and they'll join together to break the siege. But you can't easily ever add troops inside the fort to make it more defensible. Once it's besieged, it's being besieged. Okay. Anyways, we're going to construct the palisades. And we will end our turn again. Okay, we didn't find any sites in Tiny Willow. The dormant pretender gods are awakening, so it's been about a year now, 12 turns or so. And so now any ones that were marked as dormant at pretender creation, they're now awakening around this time. So the ones that... It's within a few turns. It might have already happened for some gods, and it might happen in a turn or two, but it's around this time that they're awakening. And then we had another battle. This one was flawless victory, so that's always nice to see. And it's spring again. So most of the map is going to be thawing, except where anyone has cold scales, which is going to be Ulm, and we can see Nidovanger seems to have cold scales as well. Okay. We have built a temple here, so now it is going to be doing its temple checks, and that will, you know, slowly increase the Dominion strength here. It's at 1 right now, but it might increase it up to 4, because that's our national Dominion strength. And then it might also, during that process, start sending Dominion out. And there's a lot of formulas and numbers involved. You can look up Dominion on the wiki if you really want to know how it all works. But the general gist of it is just temples are important, and they reinforce your own Dominion strength and spread your Dominion. Now, for every 5 temples you have built, your national Dominion strength will actually increase by 1. So once we have 5 temples built, we'll actually have a Dominion strength of 5 in our nation. This number will go up to 5. And so the more temples you have, the stronger your Dominion is across your whole nation, because all your temples are going to be increasing it up to that new number, and so on and so forth. So again, temples are pretty important. And you can win a game, theoretically, through Dom killing, Dominion killing your opponents. But it's very tricky without also having a physical conquest. So I think of temples and all this as more of a defensive thing. It's important to keep up in order to prevent yourself from being harmed, Dominion-wise. But also, you know, you generally want to have all of your own provinces in your own Dominion. That's important for combat reasons and out of combat reasons. So we're going to move him to Newland to build another temple. We're going to move our force onto Grey Forest. Our scout continuing to search. Vladimir will head to Land of Plenty to search for sites there. And round and round we go. Now, the only thing that I'm really not going to get to in this video and in this series is actually winning a game. And so we set the victory condition at claiming multiple thrones. We needed 6 points. So we have 2 level 3 thrones that give 3 points, 2 that give 2 points, and 2 that give 1 point. And so we need some combination of 6 points in order to win. And we see up here, this is what a throne looks like. We're going to see next turn. Let me just go ahead and end turn. That'll help me demonstrate a little better. All right, we had another flawless victory thanks to Ulm's strong troops. And we had an unexpected event in Gladewood. We see that a vengeful crone has cursed the land there, increasing the scales of misfortune plus 3. So now we go to Gladewood, we see, yes, it has 3 misfortune, meaning that more bad stuff will happen there, unfortunately. Doesn't affect our national dominion in any way, it's just this province, but it might take time for that to go away and to wear away into back to neutral. Right, so here's a throne on Gemmer. We can see it's the Throne of Twilight. So this is a 1-point throne. And it must be claimed, so you have to take over the province, meaning defeating the army there. And generally, it's going to be a tougher army. The thrones are going to be the toughest independent armies around. Level 1 thrones are barely above sort of a normal thing you might find, but you see this is mainly heavy infantry and heavy cavalry, so that's tougher stuff. There's maybe 60 of them, probably more than that. So it's not going to be the easiest fight you're going to do. And level 2 thrones are even harder, and level 3 thrones can be very difficult, especially in the early to mid game. But once you claim the province, you need your prophet, a level 3 priest otherwise, or your pretender god. One of those things. So any level 3 priest or higher, or your pretender, has to go here and do the action to claim the throne. And that will take a turn, and then it's claimed. If you lose the province later on, you lose the claim, and you have to reclaim it. And to win, you have to have a certain number of points all claimed at the same time at the end of a turn. So you might be going to, claim your last points or whatever, but then someone else swoops in and steals your throne from you, and then you can't win until you get it back or you get other points. But once you claim this, you'd get 1 Ascension point, so 1 victory point. Your Dominion spread would increase by 1, which means basically that this acts like a temple, essentially. It does a temple check. All of your blessed troops, as long as you claim this and bless them, will get +1 defense, in addition to the rest of the effects of your bless. And that's only sacreds, remember. You can't cast bless on anything that's not sacred. So we can't just then suddenly cast bless on our normal infantry and they'll get +1 defense. It's just an extra part of our bless for our sacred units. And it also produces 2 glamour gems per turn. So it acts as a magic site to generate gems. So that's a throne. If we went over to Northia, I guess we could look at that and see what sort of throne that is, but we'll just move on. We're going to build another temple here with Vidiges. Clodomir is going to search here for magic sites. We haven't found a single magic site, which is relatively unlikely, I would say. I'm making it seem like it's really a rare thing, but it's really not. So it's just unfortunate. And we're probably at the point now where we can make another commander. So we're going to make another commander of Ulm. And we may as well make it one of the nicer ones that gets black plate. So we'll do that. And we don't have to repeat that order, so we'll just do it once. And now we're going to end turn again. So we're just going to kind of move through turns quickly so we can get the palisade built. Maybe find a magic site, which he still hasn't found one. We did find... we had an event happen in Pavonia that gave us a free fire gem and 2 free astral pearls, so that's kind of nice. And we see now that Balthazar is also now a famous hero for participating in all those battles. So if we look at Balthazar, he also has this heroic ability. He has heroic quickness. So now he will move in combat twice as fast and attack in combat twice as fast. Ultimately, this is a really useless one for him because it doesn't affect spellcasting speed in any way. So he's not likely to move and attack much. He's just going to be casting spells. But, it's okay. Alright, then we're going to move on to Genie Woods. Clodomir is going to move to Gladewood. Search there. Our scout continues to move on. And now we have Frederick. So Frederick is going to be getting a full squad of, a good arrangement of infantry. And he'll also get a total of 7 Black Knights. So we're going to script these guys a little bit differently now. We're going to do hold and attack closest, and then we're going to do hold and attack rear. So these guys, they're not going to wait for any command or anything. They're not guarding anyone. They're just going to be holding for 2 turns and then charging to the rear, much like Raderick does. We're also going to give you just a handful of bodyguards just to be certain. Okay, and we're going to move these guys further up. So we're going to do a double line formation here. So they're a nice, strong, defensive line. We're going to put the Black Knights a bit further back. Remember, that was the reason why we had Raderick hold 3 turns, because we don't want him to rush in and draw all the attention. We kind of want him to sneak past a little bit with the enemy focused on our front line. These guys are combat speed 20, so they're pretty fast. They'll race across the battlefield pretty quickly. And then for Frederick, we're just going to have him hold for a few turns and just stay behind the troops. He doesn't have any important role here. He doesn't have any spell casting. He's not a prophet or anything like that. And so this is our basic little army that can do quite a bit of stuff. We do have the Clockwork Soldiers, and I guess we could bring them along in battle, and we may as well. So we'll bring them along with Gundamar. And we'll have them hold and attack closest as well. Now, Gundamar, as a leader, he doesn't have any stars or anything like that. He has no special leadership capabilities, so they get -1 morale, but it doesn't matter because they have 50 total, so they'll never rout. And he can't do line formations. So he can't put them in a nice clean line like that. But instead, I'm actually just going to have him put them in a skirmish formation to be a slightly larger box and target. And that will allow the infantry to kind of move in past them as well. We just want them to make first contact because they're a bit more expendable than my actual soldiers. And they're pretty defensible, so they should be okay for a little bit. If they die, it really doesn't matter much to me. And this also allows Gundamar now to cast a similar setup to Balthazar. He can cast Temper Armors a few times, and we'll just put him on cast spells. Now remember, putting him too far forward does mean that he could catch an arrow, so we want to be a little wary of that. We don't have bodyguards on him, so actually I'll put him on the same space as Frederick to maybe take advantage of some of the bodyguards. But Frederick is going to move after a certain time to keep up with the troops. So, yeah, I probably should give Gundamar a few bodyguards as well. Yeah, just to be safe. Okay. And, right, so those two, they're not going to take on the Lion Tribe warriors here. They're going to help clear out the rest of the cap circle here. Vidiges, he built the temple there, so he's going to move to Faircliff now. And this is still frozen over because of our cold scales that we built, or that we picked. So this is now pretty much always going to be frozen for us, except maybe in the height of summer. And, you know, that's sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. Sometimes you can use a river to your advantage as like a bottleneck for enemy armies. And if it's frozen, they can just walk over it. And other times it makes it really nice and convenient for you to traverse your own, own nation without being blocked by rivers all over the place. So there's good and there's bad parts. Okay, let's end another turn. So we had two battles. First, we had our battle in Noranthian, and this is the one with our new army. So let's just take a look at this, so we can see the Clockwork Soldiers in action. And you see that because they're on hold, because of their exhaustion mechanic, they're already generating fatigue, even though they're just standing here, because they're winding down. So having them on hold is maybe not the best thing, but I didn't want them to just rush in and die immediately. As it is, they're already going to kind of rush in. And if we look at them now, we see they're at 55 fatigue. So they do recover fatigue, just like every unit. They recover 1 fatigue per turn. And that's why they're not at 60 fatigue after 6 rounds. But, yeah, they will eventually just fatigue out and go unconscious. And then they're kind of sitting ducks for the most part. All right, we see back here, the Black Knights routed this whole army. And I don't think maybe we lost 1 Black Knight in that whole thing. There was a lot of shots being fired. This was a pretty large pack. Oh, maybe we didn't lose any. Yeah, okay, maybe we didn't lose any. So that was quite a large army, and you can see we really didn't suffer at all, just because Ulm's infantry is so very strong. But if you pick a nation that has weaker infantry, you know, any of that could be tricky. So we lost 1 infantry and 3 of those Clockwork Soldiers. But it was there was 146 enemy units there, so I'm pretty pleased with that result for my secondary army. As for Gentlewoods, we also lost in infantry, but very acceptable results overall. Okay, so we're nearly done completing the circle around the Land of Plenty fort. Just 1 more spot to go. We do see here that there is a magic site. This is the Academy of War, so there are certain sites that are just going to be immediately evident once you take it. There's also one here, the Wild Forest. This is generating 1 nature gem per turn. So this is what a magic site is. We didn't have to search for this one. Some of them are just automatically found once you take it. So that's why we now have a nature gem income. The Academy of War does not generate any magic gems, but instead a commander could enter it in order to get 4 XP as an action for their turn. 4 XP is not a lot. There's usually better ways for you to spend your commander's turns, but sometimes you might have a commander that you want to specifically train or something like that without... You might want to give him some XP to give him some bonuses before he goes into battle for the first time as like a thug or something like that, or they just don't have anything better to be doing at the moment. So you can just get some free XP with things like that. So there's all sorts of magic sites that can pop up. But we are going to be moving on to Kopos. Our other army here that we just had is going to be taking on 140 Wolf Tribe archers and warriors. This will be the true test to see how well they do. Vidiges is going to be making a temple. You see now that we're in summer, the river has melted. Which means now, after this, if he wants to go to Tiny Willow, he'll have to go all the way around across the bridge there because we don't have access to this bridge yet. But he'll probably just go to Noranthian and Anoria. Clodomir is going to be searching Gladewood. Our scout is going to continue to move past the nation of man here. Keep scouting. And we have a lot of money. I mean, we have a great amount of money. We could be doing a lot more with money, but, you know, just sometimes you might end up very wealthy for a time. We could have multiple priests sending out to build temples in all these places simultaneously. We could be setting up more forts or things like that. But this is just a tutorial, so we're going to just keep flipping along here. Okay, so the giant battle in Anoria. We'll take a look at this real quick. So you see all those shots coming in. Any one of those could just hit our mage there in the head and kill him. Also, you know, if they had... Yeah, so there you see bodyguards actually protected our commander. If they had like a line of cavalry of Black Knights or something like that, they could swoop back there and maybe be too much for our bodyguards to handle. But they routed very quickly, and we were able to just clear that out. So we killed like a pretty small percentage of their troops, but we won the day because we killed the commander, I believe. So definitely keep that in mind. We lost 2 more Clockwork Soldiers, but no infantry and no Black Knights. And our Black Knights, the 7 of them, got 28 kills total, which is a pretty good KD ratio, I would say. And then in Kopos, we lost 1 of our Pikeneers. Amazing we haven't lost more of those, considering they don't have shields. But, yeah, very nice. And at the same time, our construction of our palisade in Land of Plenty is completed. And so now we see we have a palisade here. And it has an administration bonus of 15, or an administration value. It can be upgraded to a fortress. It's got some other stats about the actual defenses of it, if it's besieged or anything like that. And it has a total of 115 resources that it's pulling in, 15% from each one. Okay. And now that Gladewood is actually within our good scales here, and it's bringing in 173 income per turn, and has 92 more resources to provide. So that's pretty great. So now, if we go to Marius and go to his construct, he can actually upgrade the palisade to a fortress, which will double its administration value. So that only takes 3 months, not quite as long, and costs 600 gold only. So we're definitely going to have him do that. And we could, we're right next to Nidavanger's capital here. So we could, if we wanted to, start besieging him. And I think just for the demonstration, I wouldn't normally do this, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll just see. So we have to defeat the army that he has here, along with any provincial defense. We see the army is about 30 units, including, I believe, some of his sacred units. But we don't get to know, obviously, the value of his provincial defense. That's a hidden number. So we'll only find that out once we go into battle. Vitiges is going to move to Noranthian. We see now that Zabulba has emerged from the underground and took over Jaburnia right next to us. So ordinarily this would be a pretty threatening maneuver. He's very close to our capital, much like we are with Nidavanger. Because he's on defensive AI, I'm not worried, but we also have Phlegra here as well. So because we've been so focused on the eastern side, we've been neglecting the western side, and our enemies are moving in to take over these positions. You know, basically provoking us into going to war. We also have the melted river here, so we have to kind of go around. And you can see where you've searched with this section. There's a level 1 fire mage is searched here, a level 2 earth mage is searched here, and a level 1 priest, which is everything that Clodomir is. So, I guess we'll go down here to Kopos. For this army, we could go to war with one of these 2 nations, but we're already starting a war with Nidavanger, and we don't really want to continue that. We could send these forces over to Nidavanger to help support them, and they're probably going to need it. But we probably want to take over some of this property before Phlegra gets to it. This stuff right here is kind of safe. We can get to that whenever we feel like it. But this stuff, he could take. Whereas Zabalba can't take over this stuff without going to war with us. And again, normally you would be very concerned about these two things, but because we're playing with defensive AI, it's not a big concern. Okay. Right, so now you can see how much more resources we have available to us. So now we could actually maybe invest in, like, sappers, if we wanted to, in order to have some ranged potential in our back line. Or we could make more Black Knights, or we could actually start making Black Plate infantry instead of Infantry of Ulm for that extra 4 protection or so. Any of those are viable options here. Or you could even make Guardians if you're worried about enemy Sacreds or enemy Pretender Gods or something like that. And that's something you could do as well. We didn't really invest much in like the Battle Axe stuff with like a flanking attack because my infantry's good enough. We're hitting hard enough, but you could do that as well. So there's a lot of different options. We can now, of course, also recruit our same national units outside of our capital at this other fort. So on a place without a fort, can't make any of your national stuff usually, but at a fort you can. There are going to be some exceptions to that. Those certain units that said in the national overview where it says capital only or can only be recruited in the capital. So those you're not going to be able to make at just any given fort. But many of your lineup you will be able to make. So here, we only have 115 resources, but we could start to make just a handful of extra infantry until we get upgraded and get more resources. Okay? So, let's end another turn and actually go to war with Nidavellir. Just to show you how besieging is. Okay. So we got our... So, you know, it doesn't take place, like, at the fort yet, where this is just like a normal battle. But you can see he has quite a few forces here. And you can right-click on any of this to look over what he's got. You know, he's got 25 slashing damage battle axes, and they're berserkers. So when they're wounded, they're going to get even 3 more attack and damage and protection values. So these things can be pretty dangerous. But he also only has 1 commander back here, I think, or... I think this is also a commander that's going with the army. So if we can kill this guy and maybe kill the other commander quickly, we can rout the whole army without much fuss. And Raderick is moving now. We're getting into the melee. Raderick moved right in, which can be very risky with those battle axes and stuff. So we're going to have to hope that his defense and protection hold out. His protection's very high, but his defense is also very high. So it is very hard to hit him, but if he gets surrounded, that defense value is going to plummet, and they might even get some critical hits on him. But we did enough damage that they couldn't stand up to it. So we're doing well. And you see it, my mage is all the way up here because he's set on advance and cast spells. So he will move all the way up and be in step with your troops. So keep that in mind. But alright, so we didn't lose anybody on that one. He moved that army out, and I guess this is a good time to mention the way that the actual mechanics work. But we also see that we're destroying the gate, but work is going very slowly. We need more men or much more time to succeed. So we are at the defense number is going down. It's just going down very slowly. Right, so you notice he had an army there. He had 30 units that were sitting there, and now they seem to be over here. And that's because of the way the turn order works after you hit end turn. Basically, all the movement orders happen simultaneously. So he issued a movement order to move his units over here. We issued a movement order to move in here. Those happen simultaneously. And so that battle was never... We weren't going to like catch them or anything like that. Like that battle was always going to occur. Or that battle was never going to occur. So, but battles happen. So say, right. So say Honoria. Say Phlegra attacks Honoria from there, and at the same time Zabalba attacks Honoria from down here. So they're both moving in at the same turn to attack Honoria. They won't join together to fight, and they won't fight each other necessarily. What's going to happen is basically it's a random coin flip of who attacks first. So they both technically move simultaneously. There will be 2 battles no matter what. But the order is just determined randomly. So if Phlegra wins the coin flip, he'll attack me. And that'll happen first. If he loses, then Zabalba will go, and he'll attack me afterwards. If Phlegra wins the battle in Honoria, however, first, then Zabalba will be attacking him. And there will be a second battle between Phlegra and Zabalba. So there's always going to be 2 battles in that situation. It's just the order is determined randomly. And that means that you can't ever, like if you're playing a team game, a Disciples game, you can't work together. You can't go into battle together, which is a bit of a disappointment, I will admit. I hope that in the future there's a change to that, because that would be really cool. But yeah, you can never be certain of what order battles are going to happen. And you can often have situations where, like, see, there's a throne right here. I could actually move all my army off of this siege onto the throne if we want to take the throne. I'm probably going to do that, just so we can actually have a throne. But he might move at the same time onto the throne. So who actually does the battle against the independents, and who does the battle, you know, the second battle against whoever, it's determined randomly. If you are not at war with a nation, and you both happen to move onto the same independent province, and you end up fighting each other because of that, that is not an act of war. You are not suddenly at war because of that accident. So don't worry about that. So even, you know, you might be closing in on somebody's borders and moving on to a province, and you might be worried about getting into a fight if you both take the same province at the same turn. No matter what, that will not be war. Yeah, so we're going to abandon the siege. We're going to ditch that because that would take a long time. And we're going to move on to Lupia. Now, we are at war with Nidavellir, and he might attack me when I move to Lupia. Because the AI, I believe, always knows where you are moving, which is kind of cheap, but it's understandable. We're going to build a temple here. We have more units to add to our squad. We're going to go ahead and add some more Black Knights. We're going to add that in. Okay. And I suppose you can get a couple more bodyguards for yourselves. It's fine. And we'll leave the sappers there. And they're going to keep moving. Okay. And yeah, we're still working on research. We almost have summon earth power, and then we could cast Soldiers of Steel in battle instead, which would be great. But let's end this video and end this series by actually claiming a throne. So this was the battle in Lupia for a throne. Now this is probably a level 1 if I had to guess, because this is not a tremendous force, but it could be a level 2, possibly. There is a bit of variance, actually quite a bit of variance in the difficulty of the different thrones, even among the same tier. So you might have an easy level 2, you might have a hard level 2, you might have an easy level 3, so on and so forth. There's a pretty big difference. But I'm pretty sure this is a level 1. This is close to like just a normal independent army, but they do have this nature mage, a couple nature mages in the back, enchanter, and he's got a bunch of gems on him that he's using to cast nature and glamour spells. So that could be tricky for us. We're actually being attacked right now by little beetles and stuff. But Raderick is now going to be... Oh, okay. So... Okay, you got a little confused there. So, attack rear does not always mean you're going to be attacking the thing furthest in the rear. That's an important distinction to make. There's a bit of a mathy formula to it, I guess. Oh, Raderick is actually in quite a lot of trouble here. He may die. He got dismounted because his horse got routed. His horse is probably going to die because it has a lot of poison on it. He's getting hit by a sprite and like a dragonfly and a beetle. And there's some poison damage happening here. This scorpion does a poisonous sting. And so poison is actually sort of a damage over time effect that builds up. And that's that green number floating up. So Raderick is now dismounted. He still has very high protection, very high defense. So he's going to not be at much at risk of dying, but poison could stack up. And poison does damage and also lowers your attack and defense skills as it builds up. So he may actually die to poison from all this, unless the infantry can come in and save the day. But this was not a guaranteed victory due to these mages. And this really emphasizes how potent and how important mages are in Dominions for every nation. You know, mages are basically 80% of the game in the long run. The amount of options available to them and how impactful they are on the, you know, on the campaign map and also in battles just cannot be understated. A single mage can sway the tide of a battle with just like a big enough spell or enough spells. So, yeah. And so I think Raderick, is this Raderick? Yeah, okay. Raderick is actually routed. He's fleeing, which is probably for the best. We don't want him to die because these nature mages are just continuing to drop bugs and stuff all over us. And he's actually still poisoned, so he might die from poison, I think. Oh, and also he's got a dragonfly trying to kill him. So we may witness the death of Raderick here, unfortunately. I'm just watching. Yep, and there went Raderick. So that's a sad day, for sure. He was a great hero. And you'll notice, like, he was very well protected, like, super high protection, super high defense. But if you're surrounded by enough stuff, your defense goes down enough, lucky dice rolls, and this poison attack from these creatures is actually armor negating. It completely avoids protection and just goes straight through. And that poison damage is hard to get rid of, so it just ticks down and ticks down. And underneath all that armor, he's still only human. And so, yeah, he succumbed to just a lucky couple stings or so by being surrounded. So that can happen. I think that's another good lesson to show you, though, so that's important. There is no, like, ultimate defense. There is no unbeatable unit that just cannot be toppled. Everything has a weakness. Everything has a counter in some way. So, but we did win the battle. So we're glad to see that at the very least. Raderick's sacrifice was not in vain. We lost our hero, we lost 3 Black Knights total, and 11 infantry. But, yeah, that happened. That's how it happened. Okay. Right, so now we're here on the throne. We still have our prophet, so he can actually claim the throne of the Artificer, which was a 2-point throne. So this will count as basically 2 temples. It'll produce 2 fire gems per turn for us, and 1 earth gem for us every turn. And has a construction bonus of 20%. So all construction rituals and forging of magic items will cost 20% less gems here for a further discount. If we wanted to get a lab set up here and forge stuff or cast Clockwork Soldiers. So we're going to have Urkborn go into his commands. He's going to claim the Throne of Ascension. And we'll have Balthazar, since he's here, he will search for magic sites just in case. Now this is not something you would normally do, because you're right next to the enemy capital and you're kind of surrounded and you're not in a good position. But I just wanted to take a throne and show you what that would be like. That was certainly the most significant encounter of this entire campaign. All right, and then these guys. Oh, you can actually. There's some devils in the army here, so those are kind of scary. Those could fly to the rear and kill our commanders and stuff. So we'll take Kingdom of Dara instead. And we're just going to keep building temples. Vladimir is going to search. I'd really like to find 1 magic site just so I can show you the message. But all right. Okay, so a lot of messages here. We claimed the Throne of the Artificer, so that's 1 message. We searched Kopos for magic sites. We didn't find anything. We searched Lupia for magic sites and didn't find anything. And then we actually got attacked in Lupia. So we got attacked just where we took that throne by Nidavanger. And we can see that we actually lost that battle. We were a bit too weakened from the previous fight. Our numbers were not where they needed to be. We didn't have Raderick with us. And so Nidavanger is actually another really powerful nation once it has really good sacred units, which are these things. So having actual strong sacred units, his have this special thing where they are hard to kill. So we actually lost this battle, and the enemy now controls the province. And that's another really good lesson. Our battle at the Kingdom of Dara went just fine, and he also attacked Kopos and actually killed Clodomir, who was caught there in the battle. He was not set to retreat or anything. So this was a really disastrous turn for us, which I think is a good way to go out. So this is a great lesson here of why you would never want to do something like that, of what I just did. And thankfully, I knew it was a bad move. So that's good. If I did it and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. That would be bad. But yeah, so that was a really bad move because we were caught surrounded by enemies, and specifically, we didn't have a really true Doomstack where we could just keep stomping through everything. And most importantly, we didn't have any other provinces we were connected to. And that matters a lot for retreating. So if we look at this and we can look at the retreat details, because not all our units died. You'll notice our commander, Urkbor, he didn't die. And 15 of our infantry didn't die. But if we look at retreat details, you see Urkborn, the commander of Ulm, together with 12 units under his command, were lost when retreating into enemy territory. 0 of his units dispersed after the battle and retreated on their own. A total of 15 dispersed and retreated on their own. 0 of them made it back to friendly territory. So if you have no other provinces connected to you that are friendly, you will lose any retreating units, which is often quite significant. Now, you can use that to your advantage against enemies. If you cut off all their routes of retreat, you can then attack their main body and rout them and wipe them all out in one fell swoop, which is what I did to myself here. So that is important to remember. If you're jumping into no man's land like that can be very dangerous, or getting cut off if the enemy maneuvers around you and stuff like that. The more friendly territories you're connected to during a battle, the more avenues you have for retreat and keeping those units alive. So ordinarily that wouldn't have been resulted in just a total death of everything, but because we had nowhere to retreat to, we lost everything. So that's why that's just for multiple reasons, just a very bad move. Don't do stuff like that. Usually you want to do something like, I think they call it defeat in detail, I believe is the actual military term. And that's where you basically go through in sequence to make sure that you wipe out your enemy completely, like one by one, rather than trying to just jump towards the heart of their forces and do this big felling blow before you've really defeated everything else. So defeating in detail is often the way to go, partly because of those big retreat rules. Okay, so we lost our prophet. We can get a prophet back in about 6 turns. We can choose a new prophet and appoint him in that role. We still have a pretty sizable new army, so it's not the end of the world. We are at war with Nidavellir, but if we really wanted to not be at war with him, we could send off a diplomatic missive to Nidavellir and propose a non-aggression pact. And so at the end of this turn, next turn, he'll receive this. He can then respond to it, and then the following turn, so 2 turns from now, we will get his response on whether or not he accepts. Now, if the following turn we see that he suddenly has attacked us, that means that he did not accept, and we already know the answer. But he may not. But he's no longer on defensive mode as an AI. He's at war. Defensive just means they won't just jump into war with you. But now that he's at war, we are at risk, and especially Gentle Woods. We may want to put a bunch of provincial defense here. Maybe not that much, but I have a lot of money. So that may dissuade him from attacking there. And maybe we want to start moving our army east to deal further with Nidavellir and start defeating him in detail. And then maybe capture his capital, which will be very lucrative if you actually take someone else's capital. Because, again, it's like the biggest site of income and resources and stuff. So that's not a bad idea to actually win a war like that, if you can. But it might just be too costly for you or too lengthy, where everyone else not at war just progresses and starts taking thrones. Because again, the victory condition we have set is thrones. So anything that's not a throne does not necessarily increase our chances of victory. But, oftentimes in games like this, you will have to win at least 1 or 2 wars. Right. I think that's about it, though. I think I've covered most aspects of the game that you're going to encounter, at least, for you to jump in with Ulm or a similar nation, learn the units in the roster available to you. You should have a good understanding at this point of what all their stats are, what makes up a unit, how to how to pick and choose between different units. You know how to go through and issue commands to commanders, put units into squads, and set up battle scripting and battle formations. You know how to move commanders into battle and take over new provinces, put a provincial defense and temples and things in those provinces, or even forts. And you even know how to cast ritual spells and forge magic items and equip those. That's pretty much everything you need to get through an easy AI game. And so I'd encourage you to do that at this point if you've just been watching these videos and are interested in playing. There isn't much more that I could teach you just like turn by turn now that wouldn't just evolve into like actual strategy and stuff like that. And, you know, and we could play out the rest of this game, but I think I've imparted most of the information that I want to impart. Beyond this, you know, it just gets into nation-specific stuff or deeper strategies and more intricate strategies related to playing a specific nation, or just, you know, kind of advanced stuff like thugging and things like that, or blood magic or communions, or, you know, all sorts of stuff like that. But with a nation like Ulm, or as Ulm, which is relatively simple with strong infantry against easy AI, you shouldn't have too much trouble at this point. So, yeah, that's going to be the end of my tutorial series, at least for now, unless people really want to hear more about a specific topic or want me to do more of something. So I hope you've enjoyed it if you watched all 3 of these videos. Like I said, this is my favorite game now. I cannot get enough of it. There's just so much variety between all the different nations and the 1,000 different spells and all the different units, and so many different unique sort of situations that arise every single game. You know, no game is exactly alike due to how much different stuff is happening and can happen. So it's really fantastic. I just wanted to make this series to get the word out there a bit more about Dominions and how good it can be, even though I acknowledge, and everyone acknowledges, that it's a bit rough around the edges, especially for new players. It does not make it the easiest experience to get into. So I hope I've helped a little bit with that. I hope you check it out. But for now, my name is Mang. This has been How to Play Dominion 6, and I'll see you fine folks around.